I'm accompanied by my colleague Nathan Forage, or Nate, today, who's our VP of Strategic Solutions. Nate has a lot of experience working with IT resellers, managed service providers. He himself worked at a managed service provider originally, where he was responsible for the data protection solution. But for a while now, Nate, you're with NovaBACKUP and supporting us as VP of Strategic Solutions in our support, in our product development when it comes to our solution. And then myself, Josephine Forage, I'm the Director of Product Marketing. The two of us will tell you a little bit more about cloud backup, how you can leverage it for your customers' data protection strategy, the ins and outs of cloud backup, and how you can simplify offering cloud backup for your customers as well. Before I dive in, though, I wanted to start a quick poll to see where everybody is, basically. So let me launch the poll, and then I'm reading the question for you. So what are your plans regarding cloud backup? We are curious, for all of those who are here. Do you already offer cloud backup for your clients? So you already have something set up and you're already running with it? Or are you in the process of getting your clients backing up to the cloud? You're maybe already started looking into a solution, implementing a solution. Or are you still looking at how to implement a cloud backup this year? So you're at the beginning, but you want to get it set up this year. Are you just starting to look at it? You don't know really quite yet where you want to go, or you're not interested in cloud backup and you just had a couple of minutes to spend here with us. So I'll give it a little bit of time, and I see some answers are coming in already. So I'll give it a quick second to see what the choice here is. All right, okay. With that, I see a lot of people have submitted their answers. Thank you. I'm sharing those as well, so you can see who we have here on the call. So a lot of you already have a cloud backup service running. That's interesting. But then there's a good mix of people who are just looking into. So I hope this webinar will be helpful for you in figuring out, okay, what is the cloud good for, and what situations should I offer cloud backup? And what are the things to keep in mind when starting with a cloud backup service as well? So thank you so much for answering. And with that, let's get started. So we're talking about cloud backup, right? But cloud backup is essentially a method to bring your data offsite. And just to take a step back a little bit, because it's not just cloud backup, but offsite backup in general is just a crucial topic for a lot of businesses because of all the regulations that are out there. So you have HIPAA, you have GDPR if you're in Europe, you have your cyber insurances that a lot of you are probably utilizing or your customers are utilizing directly. And they essentially require to back up the data in an additional location, not just local on where your customers, but in an additional location that it has to be somewhere else offsite. And there are many ways on doing that, right? So we listed a couple of options here. Tapes obviously is a long time staple when it comes to offsite backup. So are removable disks, NAS replications, and the cloud, which is today's topic as well. And I know, Nate, you have a lot of thoughts on all of these regulations and cyber insurances. So why don't you share some of those with us?
Yeah, certainly. So, I mean, cloud backup isn't new. Offsite backup isn't new. I mean, we've been doing this, you know, like Josephine said, I've been with NovaBACKUP for 18-ish years or something like that. And before that, at an MSP that we were doing cloud backup, you know, back in the day before there was really high-speed internet readily available. I mean, we were doing stuff way back in the early 2000s, late 90s, with cloud backup even back then. And then there's tapes, removable disk, and all this other stuff. Some of these, you know, regulations and other things have really just kind of reinforced that, you know, you actually really need to do this in order to comply with it. And a lot of them have different sets of rules and things like that that you need to do. You know, in Canada, you have to keep the data in Canada, same with EU stuff and some other things. So it gets really complicated really quickly. And when you're talking about, you know, dealing with tapes, removable disk, and all this other stuff, there's other complications for those that make makes cloud a little bit simpler for a lot of people. I would say. I know we're going to go into that a little bit further in the other slides, but I just very, very high level there.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
And Nate, you're absolutely right, right? This webinar is not to say like, oh, all the other methods are not worth it. Cloud is the only one. That's really not the point. We want to acknowledge there are multiple ways on how you can help your customers get their data offsite and set up an offsite backup. This webinar is just specifically about cloud and the ins and outs for that. So let's talk about that. We wanted to cover a couple of aspects when it comes to cloud backup or cloud data protection. There are many out there. Cloud has been around for a long time, so there are a lot of things that are always being said when it comes to cloud. But we wanted to focus on these 5 in today's webinars, and specifically on how the cloud can help when it comes to backing up your customers' data in those 5 areas. So starting with flexibility. And I know that is kind of the one point that you always hear when the topic is cloud, and no, we are not stopped 5 years ago or anything. But when it comes to data protection, flexibility is actually an interesting topic when you're going into, a cloud backup destination, because it depends on how you're setting up your cloud. Are you setting it up in a self-hosted way? So as an example, do you rent a co-location, or do you have your own data center and you want to put it there? Or are you utilizing a cloud backup service of some kind that allows you to, utilize their infrastructure and you just throw the data over there essentially? Because there are pros and cons for both of these options, and it really depends on your customer's use case on where you want to go with that. So Nate, do you want to cover that a little bit more?
Yeah, this is an interesting one, because this is something that we actually, when we're making this slide, discussed it quite a bit. A lot of people say public versus private cloud and all this other stuff. But when you talk about private cloud, private cloud is still could be in the public space, a publicly hosted thing. That's why we kind of went with a self-hosted versus platform as a service, because platform as a service is really, someone else managing and dealing with everything like that. Whereas that self-hosted is, you really own everything, soup to nuts, everything on that. So you have to deal with all of the, patching, security, and everything else. Whereas a platform as a service, you need, you basically outsource that portion of it to whatever platform that you're going to. And in some cases, depending on your customers, if it's like a government and they need like GovCloud or something else, you might only have the option of doing a platform as a service, or depending on if it's, we've seen some weird ones, even just the last couple of years, on how specific some of these customers and use cases have really been in even the self-hosted or the platform as a service. So you really have to kind of look at how you need to use the cloud for backup storage for your customers to really determine which way you kind of need to go. We'll go into cost a little bit in just the next portion of it, but that also lends itself to which way you want to go in the flexibility here too.
Yeah, I think it also, to add to your point, right, it depends on what else you're going to do, because obviously backup is not the only service, right? It's what else are you going to offer for your customers? Yep.
Yeah, I mean, if you're already doing a bunch of stuff in AWS or Azure or what have you, it might make sense to use that. Or, it really depends on what you guys are already doing and what services you have for your customers already.
Right. And then talking about cost, I mean, that is a very important point, right? When it comes to anything IT, really, not just the cloud. But cost is a big topic when it comes specifically to the cloud backup part, right? Like low upfront cost is one of the big advantages that is always touted when it comes to cloud. What is important, though, that it's not just the low upfront cost you should look at, but also on the ongoing fees. Because especially when it comes to cloud storage, what we see is a lot of hidden fees that all of a sudden you're hit with on an ongoing basis, like egress fees and whatnot. So it's important to look specifically, if you're using the cloud for backup, look at what are the real costs for the backup service that I want to use, no matter if it's self-hosted or if you're utilizing a platform as a service or public-private, whatever you call it. But especially for backup, the predictability of cost is crucial. And in that case, unfortunately, cloud is not cloud, or cloud service is not cloud service.
Yeah. I mean, you're entirely right, Josephine. I mean, depending on what you're doing, who you're doing it with, the differences and all the gotchas can really add up. I mean, say if you're paying for ingress or egress, that can really add up when you're talking about backup, and the eventual recovery and the testing of the recovery can cost you depending on what you're doing. Something that we're seeing more and more people go to in order to, I would say, be predictable or control that cost is basically having like a flat fee for that storage. Yeah, it's more and more common, especially when you're selling it to your customers, to bundle in that flat fee with whatever services you're doing. So say you're doing, firewall, storage, AV, what have you, Office 365, bundling in a flat fee for the storage so it's predictable, so their bill is the same every month. That is where we see a lot of the people really explode and make it very easy for these customers to continue with them, because it's not, oh, hey, you used X amount more this month, so your price is going to go that way. And it comes a little bit, well, number one, it's a billing headache for you to those customers. And then these customers will always ask you, especially the people that are, watching the nickels and dimes and stuff like that, they want you to justify why this went up and everything else. So it gets you away from having to explain that to the customer if it's just a flat fee for them when you sell it to them.
Yeah. And to your point, right, it's also not just flat fee for your customers, but also flat fees for you. So when it comes to cloud storage, they're just the most known business model essentially for cloud storage providers is usage-based. So you pay for what you use, or again, for the traffic that you put through the cloud storage. But there are options where you can get cloud storage at a flat fee as well. So what that means essentially is you say, hey, I know that I will not need more than 10 terabyte for all of my customers ever. So I'll just pay a flat fee for all of those 10 terabytes, and that's it then. And that can have an advantage if you have customers where, they always use everything up, right? If you sell as a flat fee, hey, you get all of these things with antivirus and backup and services, and then you get 500 gigabyte of cloud on top of that, et cetera, et cetera. And you know that those customers are using their 500 gigabyte for the cloud backup, then it might make it easier for you as well as a business to just pay a flat fee to the cloud storage provider.
And conversely, but I wanted to add something from yesterday. I was talking with a partner that had brought on a police department that they have to back up all of the video from the police cams and stuff like that. And they're like, we're going to start at 5 terabytes, and this is just going to grow because they have to keep it forever. So in that case, that flat fee doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. It's more usage based, and if you can get a lower price on that usage based on a I'll call it a set minimum, that makes a lot of sense too. And people like police departments and that type of thing understand that storage is going to be growing, and you have to make sure that these customers understand, hey, part of this is going to be that you need to keep this data forever, and since you have to keep this data forever, this price is going to be going up and you have to budget for it. Yeah.
And then another thing that also falls into the cost bucket and a little bit also into the next bucket when it comes to customer retention is we're talking cloud very specifically here. But you have to keep in mind, it's often not just cloud. And we've seen a lot of services pop up that only do something cloud specific. But when it comes to data protection, right, it's local and cloud. So you still have to, talking about regulations and cyber insurance, you still have to do a local backup, and then an additional offsite backup which can go into the cloud. So there's an additional cost with that. But what it allows you when you combine the two, is that customer retention piece. So when you set up a service, like similar to what Nate was just describing, where you combine certain things, antivirus, services, backup, and then local and cloud backup, it binds the customer towards you. You create a service, a unique service to you that your customer just cannot say no to, essentially. And just then this whole model itself of cloud is a subscription model, right? It's a subscription-based business model, or software as a service business model. It lends itself to increasing customer retention because you own all of these things, right? You're helping your customer with all of these things, and it helps you with creating a business that is done not nickel and dimeable, if that is a way you can phrase this, but you're creating a package that is, I give you all of these things. I'm selling you all my expertise and my knowledge and all the great stuff that I'm doing. So a customer of yours can then not come in and say like, oh, but the gigabyte per cloud over there is 1 cent cheaper and the antivirus is $10 cheaper over there. They just don't have that option then, right? So you make it easier for them to just stay with you and leverage your expertise to get the best IT solutions out there.
I think you hit on something that we see, at least from my perspective, working very well for a lot of partners and MSPs, is instead of line iteming everything and giving a charge for every little thing, it's all bundled into that monthly and or yearly price. If you're already doing services and you do a bundled price of, hey, I'm going to charge you $500 a month for each office or something like that, and that includes our service, which is a huge thing, which is support, everything else that you do on a day-to-day basis. It's your cloud backup, your local backup, your Office 365 for X amount of users, etc. AV, firewall, all this fun stuff. That's what we're seeing the best way to sell as a service, like a monthly service, but we're also seeing it on the yearly thing too. So if all you're doing right now is reselling or selling backup services or what have you to these people, bundling in hardware for their local backups, cloud backup service, and the actual software all as a single service, that's pretty nice for some of these customers that just want that, and it's a foot in the door for a lot of these people to get more services into them too. It is really making it sticky, especially when you're talking about some of these people that have to keep data for a very long time. I talked about that police station before. There's someone that once this MSP gets into there and gets everything going, they really have a really hard time to even think about changing from that MSP, because that MSP is storing all that offsite data for them. So that's a huge thing. And then you have all the medical dental stuff. And then I was talking with Adam earlier this morning. There's a lawyer's office that he's talking to right now that from an MSP, actually it was a partner that was selling some cloud data to them. That's another one where you have to keep the data very long, and even some of these things that companies that you wouldn't think that need to keep data long or have security. There are some new recent regulations from the FTC versus for like car dealerships and stuff like that. Things that you really don't even think about that have to protect that data and keep it safe. There's some interesting things out there. There's a lot of different opportunities for selling services and keeping people under your umbrella.
Yeah. And can you imagine what a logistical mess that would be if you would have to keep like those years of data on a tape or on a removable disk?
I mean, there's people that do it, it does work, but it's a lot easier having an unlimited size, cloud storage,
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, if you think about it, that also like the topic on, logistical mess fits also great into the control aspect of cloud. Because one of the things that cloud is great at is you don't necessarily have to be local on the customer side, because if you would have to maintain 7 years of tapes, you have to physically do something with them, right? Either your customer has to take them to a safe and you have to rely that they are doing it, or you have to go to your customer and then take them with you somewhere. With cloud, you have a lot more options when it comes to not just remote monitoring and management. A lot of solutions do that, even if it's tape or disk as an offsite solution, but also when it comes to the troubleshooting piece of it. So if something is wrong, and it's IT, something can go wrong at any given time. Nothing is perfect, unfortunately. But if something goes wrong, you don't necessarily have to go on site to the customer. You can do a lot more things from a remote perspective. And that goes hand in hand also with the standardizing your service again, right? If you have something that is very similar, if not the same, from customer to customer, it makes it much easier for you to control those things. Because in the end, as the point here says, if you take on the IT service, if you look at regulations and cyber insurances, you are the one responsible for the data of your customers. So if something happens, you need to be able to whatever, recover it, help with the audit, all those kind of things. And it's the easiest for you if you have a standard service that allows you to do that. And that is also, and Nate, I know you can tell stories about that, but that also goes hand in hand with you should be the one deciding what you're offering to your customers. It shouldn't be the customer coming around the corner and saying like, oh, I saw this ad at Best Buy or MediaMarkt if you're in Europe, right. Like with this NAS that is really cheap and has something great or whatever, you know, we've all heard those stories. You should say no to those type of things, right? Because you might not know how to utilize that software. You shouldn't learn everything that is out there. No one has the time in the world to do that. So yeah, those things just help with that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I mean, even if you're not providing, full services or anything like that, even if you're just, selling someone some backup software or selling them, what have you, we all know as in IT, it's all going to come back to you anyway. Oh, you helped me install this, or you set up this backup software, and now my SQL server isn't working right, or my blah 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 doesn't work right, or you set this up 2 years ago and I need to restore. It's on you. You set it up. We hear that every day here in NovaBACKUP in the support side. So even if you aren't doing services today and you're just reselling software and that type of thing, it always comes back to you anyway. So making sure that it's the same, you're doing the same thing across everything is the best way. That's why we have a number of knowledge base guides. So when someone says, hey, we want to set up XYZ, we have a knowledge base guide to say, here's exactly how you can do it. Or if we go into a setup support type thing, we set it up the same way, generally every time for these customers. One of the things that Josephine touched on is, having the same, only selling the same thing to people. If you have your stack, your full services, full managed services type thing, and you have your stack of software, and you go into a new place, or they say, hey, we want to add XYZ, and it's not part of your stack, of your technology stack, it's okay to say no, that we're not going to support that. There's a lot of people that they get underwater by trying to take on too much, and in the end it really bogs them down and that type of thing. Making sure that you know what you know and keeping it the same really does help a lot.
Yeah, I think the only exception might be if you're working with customers where you have to where they have a highly custom environment every single time. Of course, then standardizing is
that's a whole different
but
thing.
then your business model, right?
Yeah. But in general,
yeah, no, absolutely,
generally keep the same things, then it's better.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then it goes also then leads perfectly into the next point, which is the setup piece of it, because that is another great aspect when it comes to cloud. You do not have to set up the server and install the software and whatever, implement cables and whatnot to do that. It's you sign up for a service and then you're essentially ready to go. One of the things that we're seeing as well is, especially when it comes to cloud backup, as I said earlier, right? Unfortunately, nothing is perfect. There are issues that just happen, a connection is not happening, whatever. When it comes to data protection, it's then important that you have someone you can talk to quickly, so that you can say, hey, something is not working over here, or I have a red alert over here, or I got a message, my backup didn't go through, connection interrupted, whatever it is. Or why is not the data not backing up that I selected? Whatever it may be, it's good to have then someone that you can reach out to and say, what's going on, and get an answer quickly, ideally. And I know our support guys, they would never pat themselves on the back, but Nate, if you've worked with him before, if you're one of our partners and you've worked with him before, you know what I'm talking about, that is something that we value very much, and that we get as a feedback back from customers as well, how much they appreciate it, is just having someone to talk to that understands what's going on outside of the immediate solution, but that understands your environment, your customer's environment, and knows what needs to get done, or what places to look at potentially, is a huge help, and is a huge advantage for you then as the managed service provider, because then you in return can help your customers a lot faster, right?
Absolutely. I don't have a whole lot more to add to that, as we're running a little bit short on time. So
You don't want to pat
yeah.
yourself on the back?
No,
Yes.
no, not so much.
No, but again, for us, it's really an important piece of the whole solution, and it should be for you as the managed service provider as well. Again, no matter what vendor you're working with, right? The support is a big part of a simple setup, a simple, smoothly run service that cannot be underestimated. All right, and because Nate said, on time, and he is absolutely right with that. So before we go into questions, again, if you have any questions for us when it comes to cloud data protection or data protection in general, feel free to use the Q&A section at the bottom of the slide that you're seeing in your controls to send us the questions. We have a couple of minutes left to answer those. And while you're typing your question, let me tell you just a little bit about NovaBACKUP, and outside of great support, what we are about. So as you've probably figured, we are a backup and restore solution, and we are focusing on reliable and easy to use data protection solutions. And the focus for us really is to provide a solution that helps you apply to those regulations that we mentioned earlier, with both local and offsite backup. Cloud is a big topic for us, and we offer a cloud storage option in addition to our backup solution. And depending on your business model, that cloud can be a usage-based model, pay as you go. It can also be a flat rate option, so that you just say like, hey, for this customer, they just want to have that many gigabyte or terabyte of cloud added to their license. We offer that option as well. And if you want to read a little bit more, I paste a few further information into the chat. One is our new ebook that is all around cloud data protection. You don't have to fill out a form. I'll send you the direct link to the ebook. And then if there is anything at any given time that you want to ask us, or you want to set up a meeting, or you want to set up a meeting to learn more about the solution, or want to see it in action, you can do that as well. And I just send you the contact information for our team here. And with that, I'll go over to the questions and see if there's anything coming in, if you want to hear more about anything specific to cloud data protection, or again, anything else. So Nate, what are you seeing?
So there's a couple quick ones that we can, I know we're over time, but a couple quick ones I wanted to get to because they are kind of important. They're asking, I was talking about different regulations for different countries and such. What countries do we have cloud storage in right now? So right now we have cloud storage available in the US, US data center, Canadian, and then we also have one in Germany. So we kind of cover those. There is some questions about doing some stuff down in Australia, maybe in the near future. For some reason, we tend to get a lot of Australian customers too. So that is something that we'll look at. But right now, those are the three options that we have for where you can store that data. And that is one of those things where it is that data stays in that data center in that region. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you know Germany and you know the regulations of it,
Yep.
you know,
Yep,
we're
exactly.
applying with the harshest regulations with our cloud storage. So all good on that one.
Here's a great question. So even, with data storage, growing and growing, even local LAN speeds are considerably hindering, like full backups and that type of thing on how long that backup will take. One of the things that we do when we go to the backup to the cloud is it is an incremental forever type backup. So that initial backup, yeah, it's going to take a while depending on how much storage space you're having, but after that initial backup, it's really just the changed parts of files and the new and changed files. We see on average, it's about a 1 to 2% change per day if you're doing a daily backup. So say if, you can do the calculation, but when you're talking about cloud backups for even, 5-10 terabytes worth of cloud data for your initial backup, that subsequent daily backup is really considerably smaller, and it actually does make sense to do a daily type backup, even for relatively slow bandwidth for the upload. Had a couple questions on new update of the software coming soon. So as some of you might have heard, we are coming out with a new version that'll probably be end of July is what we're kind of looking like right now. It's a little bit more delayed than we'd like to have had it, but we ran into some things that we wanted to make sure that are sorted out. There's some new updates to what we're doing with the cloud backup, specifically some new image backup fixes and some other things with image backup, along with there's a lot of changes on the central management portal that have kind of been pushed, and that's been pushed kind of incrementally as things are getting done on that in an agile type way. But on the client and agent side, there is going to be some changes on how the cloud backup is working and that type of thing, and how I'll call it the ease of use on how to actually set up those cloud backup jobs. So
Yeah,
that'll be nice.
Yeah, I think one interesting piece also to mention is, and we talked about it a little bit briefly throughout the webinar, cloud is often used as an all or nothing, like cloud backup as a service is kind of like an all or nothing service. So you set up the service and then you offer it to all your customers. Sometimes it just doesn't make sense. So one of the things that we are launching as well in the release that Nate was talking about is the ability to set up a cloud backup service on a per customer basis. So you have the option to say like, hey, no, we are going all in on cloud backup and the majority of our customers want to leverage that. But if you're a service provider that for some reason doesn't want to offer cloud backup to all of your customers, or your customers just don't have the bandwidth generally, right? It's just the one or two of you, one or two of those customers could do a cloud backup just from a technology perspective here. We offer a solution for that too, to then say, hey, just attach a flat rate cloud backup portion to a specific license for that customer, and then it's not a big service that you have to set up. So that is also something we're really excited about, because we think there's a lot of value in cloud, but we understand it's not always the right solution for everyone. But we want to enable our partners as much as possible so that they can find the right solutions for their customers, even if it's just, a smaller portion of your subset.
I want to kind of piggyback onto that a little bit. So we understand that not everyone wants to do cloud. So after this release that we're coming out with, the next thing that we'll be focusing on is actually some local backup stuff. We're changing how local backup is going to be working. We're going to introduce the new engine that we use for cloud for our local backups too. So it's going to considerably increase the speed of both backup and restore, and some other things that I think will be interesting to a lot of people. So But we aren't only just a cloud backup solution.
Yeah.
We are going to put a lot of love into our local backup in this after this next release.
Yeah,
So
and because it's important, right? I see there's one
yeah.
comment in here where it says like, hey, cloud is not the last resort for data protection. Absolutely right. Like cloud has to be one part of a data protection strategy, right? It has to be a mix of, you have to do a local backup, so you have a really quick restore if something happens, if a file gets lost. And then you have an additional offsite backup, and that can be a cloud, but you can even have a third offsite backup to tape. So it really depends sometimes on, you know, what your customers' need is and in what industry they are in. Like healthcare, as an example, is much more regulated than I don't know, a small retail store, as an example. So it really depends on who your customers are. And absolutely right, cloud backup on its own should never be your only backup strategy. It always has to be a part of your general backup strategy.
Oh, I think with that we should probably we're already 10 minutes over. So if there's any other questions that you have, please, Josephine put all the links there so we can answer them afterwards. But we'll give you back the rest of your day.